स्टडी IQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
Hello, Namaskar, Namaskara, Namaskaram, Namaskar. My name is Pooja Divedi. Welcome to my class, The Daily Current Affairs, where we will learn the important news since the past 24 hours and also how to tackle the prelims 2024. We have a lot to cover today, approximately 10 to 12 news that are very important from the perspective of your examination as a whole. The specific segment also deals with key cabinet decisions that were taken yesterday. So I have included everything. You do not need to get worried about missing out on anything. So before I begin, I would also like to inform you about the batches we have launched since 19th of June onwards. These are prelims to interview live batches. For students who are wanting to take admission, tomorrow is the last date. So do it as soon as possible. For Hindi students, we have a complete Hindi batch. For English ones, we have complete English. And for those of you who are interested in both Hindi and English, we have the English batch. So these are separate batches which will provide you not only the study material along with the live classes, but also mains test series, prelims test series, daily current affairs module, answer writing practice on a daily basis, weekly test, and a mains residential program for those students who are going to qualify prelims 2024. By mains residential program, I mean those of you who will qualify prelims 2024 will be called to the Study IQ campus, and there you will study for mains examination free of any distraction. We will take care of you there. So in order for you to avail the discounted fee, you have to use the code PD Live, okay, whenever you are going to take admission, because actual cost is 60 to 70,000, but once you use PD Live, you will get it at 29,999 only. Tomorrow is the last date, so be quick. If you want to get the PDF of this particular class, please be a part of my Telegram channel. Any questions you have with respect to UPSC, you can talk to me on my Instagram as well. So these are the many important events that we are going to cover. It's a comprehensive and holistic class, so be with me, because not only we will talk about important facts but also how to tackle the examination, because sometimes what happens, important events, these flee our mind. So in order for you to understand the entire prelims examination, we will look at these questions. With respect to India's position in the latest energy transition index, consider the following. India has emerged relatively less affected from the recent energy crises. The pace of the thermal power plant expansion has considerably increased in India. India is the only major economy with energy transition momentum accelerating across all dimensions. How many of the statements given above is or are correct? Once we talk about this particular energy transition index, we have to know India specific details. So be very careful about the general highlights and the India specific highlights. India has been positioned at 67th rank this year, and India has emerged relatively less affected from the energy crisis that is occurring in the world. Why? Because the share of natural gas in our energy mix is relatively low, and that is why we are not impacted a lot, unlike the US and European countries. So first statement is definitely correct. The pace of thermal power plant expansion has considerably decreased. That is why India is doing better. So second is not correct. And India is the only major country, major economy with energy transition momentum that is accelerating not only in one but all dimensions. So many sectors of our country are not untouched by energy transition. Everywhere we are transitioning from the current energy to cleaner and greener energy. So first is correct, second is not correct, third is correct. 1 and 3 will be the correct answer. 2 only, because we had to select that. Now the Global Energy Transition Index is an annual report which is published by World Economic Forum, remember this, in collaboration with Accenture. It quantifies the global economies on the basis of what they are doing to have a cleaner energy in their economy. Also, it provides a numerical value for how well a country is doing on a scale of 0 to 100. Also help in developing energy transition map. So how a country can transition from the current conventional energy to greener energy, that is also prepared by this particular index. It all started in 2018. The index was published for the first time ever in 2018. The current index talks about 120 countries on 39 indicators and ranks them on a scale of 0 to 100 on the basis of system performance imperatives and transition readiness. Okay, system performance readiness consists of security and access, environmental sustainability, and economic development and growth. So what the country is doing on these three things is a part of system performance imperatives. Transition readiness means how ready is a country to transition from conservative fuels to greener fuels. That means how much human resources you have maintained in that. You're training them, right? How much capital you are investing, if you're building any infrastructure or not. So this is energy transition imperative. All right. Now, top 5 countries, of course, most of them include European countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Switzerland. And the global energy transition has right now plateaued. That means right now coal and unconventional sources of energy are still being used. Why? Because of the lack of sufficient support, and it has been dented during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is the biggest reason. France is the only G20 country that reflects in the top 10, and it is followed by Germany at the 11th place, US 12th, and UK 13th. Out of 20 countries, only 113 countries have performed better than before, but only 55, including India, have performed by more than 10 basis points. So India is one of the few countries. India is the only major economy where energy transition is accelerating among all dimensions, and that is why it is placed at the 67th position. Right now, we have continuous economic growth, and that needs lots of energy. And energy, of course, we majorly get from coal. Coal still remains the king, but still India is able to transition very well. This is one of our USPs. India has successfully reduced the energy intensity of its economy and carbon intensity of its energy mix, because since a very long period of time, we have been developing on the basis of energy such as coal. Still we are doing this, but we have reduced the intensity of usage. That means we have renewable energy in our hands as well, while achieving universal energy access and effectively managing affordability of electricity as well, such as achieving universal access to electricity. Almost all the regions of India now have accessibility to electricity. Reducing or replacing solid fuels with clean cooking options. I would like to mention specially Ujjwala scheme of the current government. Increasing renewable energy deployment as well, which is one of the goals of the Paris Agreement. Moving on. India also emerged relatively less affected because low share of natural gas in our energy mix. Energy mix is what? The basket in which we have different sources of energy: coal, natural gas, biofuels, oil, nuclear energy. All these are a part of the energy basket. Increased use of existing generation capacity is taking place, and the pace of thermal power plants expansion is decreasing, not increasing. But there are challenges which have been pointed by this report. The import dependence that we have on different countries with respect to importing oil and coal. But still, we have diversified the countries from which we are exporting. So we are not just dependent on one country. The energy mix sadly remains a lot of coal and carbon oriented that we have to reduce. Macro challenges include how challenging the country is going to find itself when it comes to transitioning is based on two things. Because we have to grow economically, we have demographic dividend, we have to grow economically. That is why we need more energy. How we will diversify our energy resources? First that, and the urgency to create new jobs for the generation. With respect to QS World University Ranking 2024, consider the following statements. IIT Bombay has climbed 23 positions, securing 149th position. IIT Delhi climbed up 2 positions, and IIT Kanpur and Madras secured lower positions than before. University of California is the only institution to have earned a perfect score of 100 in the new sustainability indicator. So, how many statements given above is or are correct? Right now, not many institutes of the country are doing well. Why? Because change of methodology when it comes to ranking, it has differed from the last few years. But IIT Bombay has climbed 23 position, making it the only institution in India to be among the top 150. So this is a good thing. But IIT Delhi has lowered its position. It still is there in the top 200, but it has still lowered its position if we compare it to the before. Then IIT Kanpur and Madras have also lowered their positions. University of California, yes, is the only institution that has got a perfect 100 when it comes to sustainability indicator. So first is correct, third is correct, second is not at all correct. So these kind of questions could arise in your examination. Be very mindful of it. 1 and 3. 2 only will be the correct answer. Cos Kerali Siemens ranking this was. This is one of world's leading higher education specialists. They provide an annual report. In the year 2024, for the year 2024, they have ranked 1500 universities. 3 new indicators are included. First is commitment to sustainability, how sustainable is your college or university. Greater emphasis on supporting graduate employability. You are not just teaching them but also promising them placements. Also increased international research and collaboration to solve the world's biggest challenges. Okay, so how out of the box thinking is encouraged in your college or university, that is also one of the paths. Now institutions in both Europe and America, they dominate the top 10 rankings. Almost all of them have got a perfect 100 in academic reputation, employer reputation, and how many faculty is there, how much of a faculty sustainability is there when it comes to students. So this is also good. National University of Singapore is the only Asian university to sit in the top 10. University of California is the only institution to have earned a perfect 100 when it comes to sustainability indicator. University of Pennsylvania, Toronto, British Columbia, they all are with a perfect, almost perfect score of 99.9. 85 new entrants are there, more than half are from Asia. India as well as Malaysia have 5 each. Bangladesh, 11 new institutes have been added to the list. Indonesia, 10. And Kazakhstan, 4 from Kazakhstan having the highest representation. IT Bombay climbed 23 position. And since the last 8 years, we are able to find a position through an Institute of India in the top 150. It was in 2016 when IISc Bangalore secured the 147th position. IIT Delhi fell down but still remains among the top 200. IIT Kanpur and Madras fell down out of 200 now of the top 200. Meanwhile, University of Delhi ranked 407th. And Anna University has ranked 427th, made a debut this year. For the first time ever, it is being reflected among the world's top 500 universities. IISc also dropped, and it has dropped 70 positions. Earlier it was 155, now it is 225. A big drop because of the change of methodology. Now, next question. With respect to the tok macaque monkey, consider the following statements. These are endemic to Sri Lanka and Myanmar only. That means these are found only in these two countries. They are mostly frugivorous. Frugivorous means what? They eat mostly fruits. Okay. Lifespan for captive tok macaques is reported as up to 35 years. What is the keyword over here? Captive. Okay. That means not in the wild, not free, but in captivity. Then they are designated as vulnerable in the IUCN Red List. How many of the statements given above is or are? I think it was not correct. Yes, not correct. See, tok macaque monkeys in the captivity, their lifespan ranges from 29 years to 35 years. That makes the third statement to be definitely correct. And most of them, as in their diet, mostly they are dependent on fruits. That is also correct. Frugivorous. The key word here is mostly, not entirely, mostly. That means they eat insects and birds as well. So they are kind of omnivorous, but mostly they eat fruits. That is why they are mostly frugivorous. And they are designated as endangered, not vulnerable. So fourth statement is incorrect. Third is correct. Second is correct. And they are endemic only to the country of Sri Lanka, not Myanmar. First statement is incorrect. So not correct ones are first and fourth. That means 2 only will be the correct answer. Sri Lanka has recently scrapped the plan to export 1 lakh endangered tok macaque monkeys to China. Sri Lanka is right now going through a financial crisis like never seen before. So a private company from China wanted these endangered monkeys in their country so that they could be shown to other people, as in the zoos. But now this plan has been scraped off, thankfully. Now if we talk about tok macaque monkeys, these are very beautiful monkeys, as you can see. The word tok means this hairstyle that they have. Such beautiful hairstyles. So because of that only they are known as tok macaque monkeys. The word macaque comes from the word macaca, which means monkeys in Portuguese. Okay, and these are endangered. Also, they are named for the hold of hair on the top of their heads, tok, and they are endemic to Sri Lanka only. Okay, they form large troops with complex social hierarchies. They also show sexual dimorphism. That means there is a difference in the physical characteristics of both males and females. They differ from each other. This is known as sexual dimorphism. Okay, remember that. They are also known as releva or rilava, and these species have sexual dimorphism. That means males are physically larger than females, and males also have larger canine teeth. Lifespan in captivity is from 29 to 35 years. Sadly, in the wild, they can survive up to mostly 5 years. Tok macaques are mostly frugivorous. They eat fruits a lot, but also reptiles, birds, and insects. And of course, a very beautiful fact about them is that they befriend different species very well. So if you find a tok macaque monkey in Sri Lanka, grooming the family dog, it's not very strange. They do that. Moving on. With respect to RFID used in the FASTag, which of the statements given below is incorrect? An RFID tag uses a small electronic chip for extracting information which is surrounded by an antenna. FASTags use a passive RFID chip. A FASTag user need not worry about security since RFID technology doesn't identify an individual. Each EPC code, which is a 13-digit number, in the RFID FASTag is issued by Bureau of Indian Standards. So we have to select the incorrect one. RFID is the code of FASTag. That is why it is important we know about it, right? So RFID tag uses a small electronic chip and not barcode. Okay, these do not use QR code. They have small electronic chip for extracting information. FASTags use passive RFID chip. That means they do not have a battery. They are energized when a beam reflects on them and extracts the information. This is also correct. FASTag user doesn't need worry about his or her identity. Why? Because they do not identify the individual. So C is also correct. Only D is incorrect because this is issued by a standards body by the name of GS1, not Bureau of Indian Standards. So only option D is incorrect. Okay. Road Transport and Highways Minister has said that revenue has increased using FASTag, the toll revenue, and other than that, approximately 70,000 crore rupees were saved. Why? Because earlier the cars and the vehicles used to stand in lines to get their toll done, but because of now mechanization of the FASTag, they do not need to stand for a longer period of time and hence they are able to save on fuel. So 70,000 crore rupees was saved. And the aim is to increase the toll revenue to 1,30,000 by the year 2030. Revenue has also increased. The revenue collection using FASTag for tolls has also increased. So RFID is the code of the FASTag. These use electronic chips to extract information, and electronic toll collection has made easy because of this. This technology uses a EPC code, which is a 13-digit number, and through this only every vehicle has been uniquely identified. It is different from the vehicle's registration number. This is also a very good prelim statement. Remember that it is not the same as the registration number. So identity theft is not possible. As you can see that FASTags use generally they use mostly they use electronic chip. Why? Because from a more distance, QR codes cannot be read properly, and that is why they use chips. All right, moving on. Each EPC code is issued by GS1, which is a standards body in India, and it ensures that each code is unique in sync with the global standards as well. Unlike barcoding, RFID uses a small electronic chip to extract the information. Our FASTag has what is called a passive RFID because it doesn't have a battery and it gets energized once the beam strikes it. And National Payments Corporation of India ensures that the data security in the case of RFID FASTag is secured. So remember that. Alright. Which of the following countries is not a claimant to the South China Sea? Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia or Singapore? That means we have to know about the countries which are littoral in the South China Sea. There are many overlapping claims, and recently the Philippines Foreign Secretary, who is on a visit to India, has said that Chinese activities in the South China Sea is pretty, intriguing as well, and also assertive. It's not sitting well with the policies of the Philippines. So as you can see, this is South China Sea, which is a part of the Western Pacific Ocean. It connects the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. That is why it is very important for us to know. It is a part of what China calls as nine dash line. So China says this whole South China Sea belongs to China, but it's not so, because Vietnam has an overlapping claim, has a claim, correctly so. The Philippines has it, Brunei has it, Malaysia has it, here and here, and you see, Indonesia also has it, but not Singapore. Okay, so Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, these all have a claim, even Brunei, but not Singapore. So option D is correct. You see, I hope you know now. Even Taiwan has it. Taiwan, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, even Vietnam, and then China. So these many countries have, and Indonesia of course. So these many countries are claimants to the South China Sea, but not Singapore. Consider the following statements. Mizoram shares a border with Manipur, but not Meghalaya. Manipur shares a border with Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland, but not Tripura. Although seems easy, but these questions can be pretty time taking. That is why I included this. Now refugee crisis is happening because of refugees moving from Manipur to Mizoram. Mizoram is getting strained. That is why this question has been asked. So let's directly look at this. Here is Manipur, and it shares its borders with Nagaland, Assam, Mizoram, right? So these three particular states are impacted. First statement was like Mizoram shares a border with Manipur but not Meghalaya. Mizoram shares a border with Manipur but not Meghalaya. This is definitely correct. So first statement is correct. Manipur shares a border with Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland but not Tripura. Let's see. Manipur shares a border with Nagaland, not Arunachal Pradesh, and not Tripura. So that makes only the first statement to be correct. Second is not correct. 2 only will be the correct answer because we had to select the not correct ones. Moving on. Consider the following statements with respect to the Children and Armed Conflict report. The highest number of violations were from the Democratic Republic of Congo, State of Palestine, Israel, among others. That means there are more. The countries where the worst deterioration took place were the countries of Myanmar, South Sudan and Burkina Faso, and the report is published by the UNICEF. So how many statements given above is or are correct? Yes, the highest number of violations when it comes to the entire globe is from the countries of Democratic Republic of Congo, Israel, State of Palestine, among many others. We will tell them about them as well. Countries where the worst deterioration took place were from Myanmar, South Sudan and Burkina Faso. Second is also correct. But this report is not published by UNICEF. It is through the Office of Secretary General of the United Nations. So first and second, these two are correct, third is not. 2 only will be the correct answer. So the United Nations Secretary General published the report Children and Armed Conflict, and for the first time ever it's a relief. After 2010, India was taken off the list, which continuously was a part of the list because of the recruitment and use of boys by armed groups in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the first time since 2010 that India has not been reflected alongside these offender countries. So 27,180 grave violations took place overall, and this is an increase since the last year. As we see that world is becoming more unstable because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Other than that, what do we see? Problems in Sudan, Myanmar, even now in India, when we talk about Manipur, world is becoming more unstable. That is why there is an increase. In 4 categories, violations are measured by this particular report. Recruitment and use of children into armed group and forces, killing and maiming. Maiming means just to weaken them by amputating them from the physical sense. And rape and sexual violence as well as abduction. These are the 4 categories. 2/3 of the violation involves small boys, and a total of 8,831 children were killed or maimed. Another more than 7,000 were recruited by the armed groups because they are easier to get. Countries which recorded the highest number of violations include Democratic Republic of Congo, Israel, State of Palestine, Somalia, Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan and Yemen. And the countries where the worst deterioration took place were Myanmar, South Sudan and Burkina Faso. And there were more than 1,000 attacks on schools recorded. 647 attacks on children, which is an increase by 112%. Nearly 2,500 children were detained, which is a practice doesn't sit with the global standards. Addition of Russia has been done in the offenders list, but not Israel and Palestine. So this is also a very good prelims statement. Consider the following statements. Statement 1. CPI helps understanding the real value of salaries, wages, pensions, the purchasing power of the rupee, and also regulating rates. And this is a macroeconomic indicator of inflation. Consumer price index, okay, which is looked at to tab retail inflation, which is increasing in India. From there, we have asked you this question. So, what do we have to see? Choose the correct answer using the following codes. See, both the statements are definitely correct because through CPI only we get the condition of a country. It's a macroeconomic indicator. Why? Because it also helps in understanding what is the real value of salaries. Like if you have a salary of supposedly 20,000 per month, and earlier you were able to purchase a lot more with 20,000. Now it is not in the same manner. What happens? The value of the money comes down or your salaries decrease. So all this is understood with the help of CPI only. So both the statements are correct actually. And because CPI is used as a macroeconomic indicator, that is why it helps us understanding the real value of money in the sense of salaries, wages, and the rest. Okay, so statement 1 and 2 both are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation of statement 1. Option B will be the correct answer. We saw these kind of questions in prelims as well. So right now we are seeing that retail inflation is far from being tamed, and it tracks the changes of retail prices in the country. That is why it is an important indicator. To measure inflation, we estimate how much consumer price index has increased in terms of percentage if we compare it for the same period of time in the previous year. If prices have fallen, this is known as deflation. It monitors retail prices at a certain level for a particular commodity or services for a period of time at rural, urban and all India level. Okay. It also helps us understanding the real value of salary, wages, currency, and also the power of and also the regulating rate. Alright, moving on. Now, this is a special segment which is related to the key cabinet decisions that were taken yesterday. First, of course, we will talk about Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs because this was the body which did it. Consider the following statements. Considers proposal for investment of more than rupees 1,000 crore. Deals with industrial licensing policies. Reviews the public distribution system and deals with fixation of price of agriculture produce. So how many of the statements given above is or are the duty of Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, which is an attached office of the Ministry of Agriculture, that is making it sure that of course PDS system is included as well as fixation of price of agriculture produces. So these two are definitely there. And it also considers the proposals for investment of more than 1,000 crore rupees. First is correct, second is correct, and third is also correct. All three will be the correct answer. It is headed by the Prime Minister of India, also consists of Ministry of Defence, Home Affairs, Cooperation, Road Transport, Highway, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, External Affairs, Commerce and Industry, Consumers Affairs, Ministry of Textiles, Education, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So if you are asked about the composition on your prelims examination, please be thorough with this. Okay. It reviews economic trends, what is the economy doing right now. Also evolves a consistent policy to keep up with the changing trend. Coordinates the activities which requires policy decision. It actually dictates the policies which are implemented at a later phase. Deals with fixation of prices of agriculture produce, deals with industrial licensing policies, and considers proposals which includes an investment of more than 1,000 crore. I could have also tricked you by writing here 500 crore. No, it's 1,000 crore. Reviews rural development and the PDS, okay, public distribution system as well. Consider the following statements with respect to PM Pranam scheme, which has to do a lot with the fertilizers. So this scheme has a separate budget. It encourages the balanced use of fertilizer in conjunction with biofertilizer and organic fertilizer. It also focuses on reduced subsidies in states. So what do we have to see? How many statements given above is or are not correct? The scheme doesn't have a separate budget at all. Whatever is saved under the Ministry of Fertilizer, Department of Fertilizer, that works for it. So doesn't have a separate budget. Yes, it encourages that fertilizers which are used are organic in nature and focuses on reduced subsidies. Subsidies have to be reduced according to the government policy. So second and third, these two are correct. First is not. Not correct, we had to select, right? One only will be the correct answer. Recently, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has done a lot of decision making. And this I will cover in another segment today itself, and you will see it and learn about it, okay? PM Pranam scheme means promotion of alternate nutrients for agricultural management, Yojana for the fertilizer sector. This is what the extension of PM Pranam goes. That means you must use biofertilizer, organic fertilizer, try to reduce the dependence on a chemical fertilizer. It aims at promoting alternate nutrients for agri products, balanced use of fertilizer in conjunction with the biofertilizer and organic fertilizer. Focuses on reduced subsidies because if too much fertilizer is being used by the farmers. What does that mean? That means the government has to help the farmers in procuring that fertilizer, right? But this is causing a pain on the treasury of the government. That is why there is a reduction of subsidies that should be taken. That is why the dependence on chemical fertilizers have to be reduced and other sorts of fertilizers have to be used. As per the initiative, states will get a 50% of that subsidy savings as a grant. Will be used on new technology and fertilizer sector so that other sorts of good fertilizers can be produced. 70% of the grant that is given is related to technological adoption, okay? And also alternate fertilizers and alternate fertilizer production units which are to be set is given grant through this 70%. These units will be established at the village, block, district level. 30% goes in rewarding and encouraging farmers and activists, farmer producer organization, panchayat, self-help groups who are making people aware about the importance of organic fertilizer. Without incentive, nobody will do anything. That's the truth. There is no separate budget and it will be financed through the saving of existing fertilizer subsidy, which is under different scheme under the Department of Fertilizer. With respect to the fair and remunerative prices, consider the following statements. Recovery of sugar from sugarcane. How much sugar we are getting from sugarcane? It is not just like that type of sugarcane. The realization made from the sale of byproducts such as molasses and baggies and export of sugarcane. How many of the above are considered while setting the fair and remunerative prices for sugarcane? Yes, fair and remunerative prices of sugarcane is the price which is supposed to be paid by the mills to the sugar growers, sugar growing farmers. A proper amount is set by the government and below that no mill can purchase the sugarcane from the sugar growers. So this is what fair and remunerative prices are, which is set by the CCEA, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, and that is why this question has been asked. It has been done recently. So recovery of sugar from sugarcane is of course taken into consideration. Use the concept of course here. If there is not a lot of sugar in the sugarcane, how will that poor farmer get the benefit? So first that the realization that has been made from the sale of what the byproducts are left of the entire process of making sugarcane and processing it. This is also taken, but export of sugarcane is not a problem here. So this is not there. So 1 and 2 only will be the correct ones. 2 only will be the correct answer. Union Cabinet has decided to increase the fair and remunerative prices for the sugarcane for the next season by 10 rupees. It will now be 315 per quintal. It's the price that is declared by the government and mills are legally bound to pay the farmers at least that or more than that in case the cane is produced and procured from them. Delay, if any mill is doing in giving them the price, then there could be an interest of up to 15% per annum. Even the properties of the mill can be attached if the sugar growers have to get their return. The Sugarcane Control Order of 1966 and Essential Commodities Act of 1955 actually mandated that there should be a fair and remunerative price for this, like the MSP for other crops. It mandates the payment within 14 days of the date of delivery of the cane. Remember that. This could be a good prelims question. Whatever fair and remunerative prices are to be set is decided by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, and it is on the recommendation of the CACP, which we call Commission for Agriculture Cost and Producers. Alright. So these are the many things on which fair and remunerative prices are decided. What is the cost of production? How much return sugarcane is giving to the growers, but if they could have grown another crop, how much return that particular crop could have given. That also is taken into consideration. Availability of sugar should be given to the customers at fair prices, and prices at which sugar produced from sugarcane is sold by sugar producers, recovery of sugar, realization made from the sale of byproducts, and reasonable margin for the growers of sugarcane on account of what were the risks and what will be the profit. With respect to the National Research Foundation, which of the statement is not correct? National Research Foundation bill has been given a way ahead by the CCEA. Now it will take a course to become an act, like every bill does. The governing body will be headed by the Prime Minister. The Department of Science and Technology will be the administrative department of NRF. The establishment or its establishment is in accordance with the National Education Policy, and it has an outlay of rupees 2000 crore. So let's see. First statement is definitely correct. The governing body will be headed by the Prime Minister as the ex officio president. And there are two ex officio vice presidents in the governing body. The Minister of Science and Technology and Minister of Education. So A is definitely correct. And Department of Science and Technology will be the administrative one. Its establishment is definitely in accordance with the National Education Policy of 2020. And it has an outlay of rupees 50,000 crore, not just 2,000 crore. Okay, so first, second, third, ABC, correct. D is not correct. D is the correct answer here. Moving on. This will be an apex body to provide high-level strategic direction of scientific research, to seed, grow and promote research and development across University Academia of India, and to foster a culture of research and innovation. Now you have to tell me in the comment segment which fundamental duty I am talking about here. Write the article, clause and subclause in the comment section. The NRF's governing body will be headed by the Prime Minister as the President. I have already told you this. Then eminent researchers and professions will be a part of it. It is in accordance with the National Education Policy with an estimated cost of rupees 50,000 crore for the next 5 years, 2023 to 2028. Department of Science and Technology, administrative head. NRF's functioning will be governed by another executive body. Administrative body and governing body, these two will be pointing out the principles and the policies. And of course, Executive Council will implement it, which will be chaired by the Principal Scientific Advisor to the government. So there are many things that we have to remember. Do not get confused between governing body, administrative body and Executive Council. Okay. Creating a policy framework and putting the process of regulation as well. This will do, and it will encourage collaboration and increase research spending. It has also repealed, this bill has repealed the Science and Engineering Research Board, which was established in 2008. It will be subsumed into NRF. Okay, so this you have to remember. Alright, so I tried to cover most of the important news, almost all of the important news that took place in the last 24 hours. I will keep on doing it, and please do watch this section regularly. Thank you so much.
Study IQ IAS. अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।